I used to think routine was safety. Wake up, make coffee, fold laundry, wait for everyone to come home. For most of my marriage, that illusion kept me sane. My husband, always on time, always distracted. His attention lived in emails, conference calls, and occasionally in text messages I wasn't supposed to see. The kind that made me ask silent questions and never speak them aloud. We hadn't touched each other in months. Not out of hatred, just distance. A silent agreement that neither of us cared to renegotiate. The man I married still existed, but he was buried under 10,000 small failures and the walls we'd both built to survive each other. Then there was my son. He just turned 18. Smart, private, awkward in the way boys are when they're trying to pretend they're men. He mostly stayed in his room, headphones in, door shut. We talked less these days. Mostly about food, chores, money. I missed the boy who used to tell me everything. Now I barely got eye contact. And me. I was fading. I'd catch my reflection and feel like a ghost in my own life. Nobody looked at me like I was still there. Not my husband, not strangers, not even myself. There's a hunger in being forgotten. Gnaws slow but constant. I never thought I'd act on it. Until one day I did. Started harmless. Curiosity, maybe. I found an old site I'd seen years ago. Live performances, anonymous. Not porn, not exactly. More illusion. You choose who you are and people pay to believe it. I made an account. Mask on, lights soft, no face, no name. Just a woman behind glass, pretending to be seen. First it was mechanical. A way to feel something. Then people started watching. Tipping. Saying things. Beautiful things. Things I hadn't heard in years. I wasn't naked at first. Just suggestive. Mystery. The attention lit something up inside me I thought had died a long time ago. It wasn't about money. I barely touched it. It was about feeling real again. And in that space behind a screen I became someone else. Someone who mattered. Someone men waited to see. But I told myself it was still safe. No one knew. I was careful. No face, no voice they'd recognize. Just performance. Just control. I'd made the rules, and I was following them. It didn't feel like betrayal. Not yet. Not really. I never expected the loneliness would feel like power when someone wanted me again. And I never expected one viewer, just one, to change everything. He came every night. Always polite. Always generous. Always familiar somehow. But I didn't question it. I didn't want to. Because once you've been invisible long enough, even a stranger's gaze feels like home. He called himself Night Runner. I noticed him because he never said crude things like the others. His messages were thoughtful, even sweet. He complimented the way I moved, the way I paused. He noticed details. He made me feel watched in a way that wasn't invasive, but intimate. He tipped more than anyone else. Regularly. Always at the same time, just past midnight. First I thought it was coincidence. Then I began to look forward to it. Our silent ritual. I'd log in and minutes later he'd appear. It was like clockwork. Soon he started messaging me privately. Small talk at first. Jokes, compliments. Then deeper things. He asked about my favorite books, what music I liked, whether I believed in fate. There was something about him that felt oddly close. The way he phrased things. The words he chose. They echoed something I couldn't quite place. I asked where he was from. He said, "Somewhere quiet like you." When I pushed more, he avoided specifics. Said the mystery was part of the magic. And it was. I didn't want to ruin it by pulling back the curtain too far. That's what I told myself. I'd started logging in just to see him. Even on nights I didn't perform, I'd check if he was there. And he always was. Always waiting. I told myself it was harmless. Fantasy. Safer than anything real. But he knew too much. He'd reference inside jokes I hadn't shared online. He'd guess my mood before I said a word. Once, he mentioned a book I'd just taken off the shelf hours earlier. Froze. How would he know that? I brushed it off. Coincidence. Nothing more. I was being paranoid. But it didn't stop. He quoted a line I used to say when my son was a little boy. Something silly, something no one else could know. It rattled me. I stared at the message for minutes before I replied. I asked how he knew. He said he must have read it somewhere. I believed him because I needed to. Because if I didn't, I'd have to consider the impossible. And I wasn't ready for that. Still, I began to watch more closely. I compared his message times to the noise in my house. Sometimes when I thought my son was asleep, I'd hear soft clicks, typing. I'd glance down the hallway. His light would be on under the door. Well, it wasn't possible. But then came the tipping patterns. He always stopped right before I ended the stream. Every time. As if he knew when I'd had enough. Like he'd memorized me. And still I didn't stop. I told myself if I ignored it, it would go away. That it was nothing. That I was imagining things. Because even when everything in me said something was wrong, another part of me was afraid of losing the only person who made me feel like I mattered. The request came on a Thursday night. He messaged me early before I even went live. Private show tonight. Just us. I've got something special for you. The tip attached was more than I'd ever received. I hesitated for the first time. My hands hovered over the keyboard. Then I accepted. I told myself it was just one night. One private performance. Nothing different than before. Just me and the screen. I set everything up like always. Soft lighting, mask on, familiar music in the background. But I felt strange. Not nervous. Just watched. He entered the private room exactly on time. Silent at first. No greetings. Just the small icon letting me know he was there. Watching. I started the performance slowly, the way he liked. Controlled, suggestive. Never vulgar. That was never our thing. He said he preferred story over shock. The chat stayed empty for the first few minutes. Then the messages started. You look beautiful tonight. Thanked him. Kept going. Focused on every gesture, every breath. Pretended not to feel the dread building in my chest. You always do that thing with your hair when you're unsure. You've done it since I was little. I stopped moving. Just froze. The message sat there blinking. I stared at it, hoping I'd misread it. I didn't type anything. Couldn't. Then another message appeared. Happy 18th, Mom. My mouth went dry. My limbs felt numb. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I stared at the screen, trying to understand what I was looking at. That name. That screen name. Night Runner. My son's favorite username when he played games as a kid. I used to laugh at it. I hit the power button on my laptop so hard the screen went black instantly. I yanked out the cord. I sat there shaking. The room was silent except for my heartbeat in my ears. For a long time I didn't move. My mind tried to lie to me. Said it was a sick prank. Someone pretending. Someone who knew things somehow. But I knew the truth the second I saw that line. The words. Timing. The familiarity I had refused to see. He knew. He had known. For how long? I didn't want the answer. My stomach turned. I couldn't cry. Couldn't scream. Just emptiness. I wanted to unlive the last few months. Take back every performance. Every message. Every glance at the screen. But I couldn't. It had happened. I let it happen. And the worst part wasn't the horror. It was the knowledge that I had seen the signs, and ignored them. 'Cause I wanted to feel loved. 'Cause I was desperate. And now that desperation had destroyed something sacred. Something that could never be repaired. All I could do was sit in the dark, staring at nothing, knowing the worst thing I'd ever done was seen, by the one person I was supposed to protect. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't move. Just sat there, numb, trying to figure out what to do next. There was no playbook for something like this. No right words. No clean escape. Every possible action felt like a fresh layer of damage. I didn't open my laptop again. I didn't speak to anyone. The next morning, my son didn't come out of his room. No breakfast, no footsteps. The door stayed shut. The silence between us was louder than anything he could have said. We never discussed it. We didn't have to. The air between us was full of the truth. My husband didn't notice anything different. Or maybe he did but didn't care enough to ask. I watched him read the news over coffee while I quietly fell apart inside. He had no idea that the person he was married to was no longer the same. That something had broken inside me, something that wasn't ever coming back. I stopped logging into the site. I deleted everything. My account, the backup files, even the anonymous payment wallet. I burned the mask I used in the backyard fire pit when no one was home. I watched it melt and disappear, but the shame stayed. Every time I looked at my son, I wanted to cry, to scream, to apologize. But what could I say that wouldn't make it worse? What language exists for that kind of ruin? We became strangers. The hallway between our rooms stretched like a mile. Meals were quiet. Eye contact was brief and painful. He never said a word about that night. Never asked why. Never explained how. I wondered if he hated me. Hoped he did. It would have been easier than indifference. I thought about confessing to my husband. About blowing up the whole illusion of our home. But I didn't. Maybe out of fear. Maybe out of cowardice. Or maybe because I knew he wouldn't fight for me either way. Instead, I wrote a letter to my son. I didn't mention the campsite. Didn't talk about the screen or the show. Just the truth beneath it all. I told him I was sorry. That I had failed him. Not just as a mother but as a person. That I let loneliness shape my choices. That I forgot how to ask for help before I broke things that couldn't be fixed. I never gave him the letter. I keep it folded in a drawer he'll probably never open. But it's there like me, waiting in silence. Some nights I walk past his door and pause. I listen for the keyboard clicks, the faint music he used to play. But there's only silence now. Heavy, endless silence. I performed to feel alive. But in doing so, I killed something sacred. Something I should have protected above all else. And now I live in the same house as my greatest mistake, walking the halls of a life that looks the same, but is no longer mine.